Hey everyone, before we get into this episode, I want to let you know about my free guidebook called Music Production Essentials. It's a brief rundown of my top 24 takeaways that I've learned over the course of interviewing so many audio professionals for this podcast. So just go to secretsonics.co and you'll see the image. It's a totally free download and I hope it helps you with your productions. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 100. Believe it or not, we made it. 100 episodes in. And I thought for the 100th episode, I'll bring you a special treat. And this is a little bit off the beaten path kind of an episode. This is an interview with my acoustician, Omer Karni, who's built 2 studios for me. And I thought it'd be super interesting to ask him about acoustics, how they work, and what his approach is. And I had a great chat with Omer. You know, he told me about his journey from being an audio engineer to being an acoustic designer, how he built his business, how he learned about sound, you know, the hard way all by himself, insights on how to approach treating a room, so that it translates, working on studios for companies like Waves Audio, all kinds of stuff like that. So we had a great chat. I think you're going to love it. And happy 100th episode anniversary to me and to you. Thank you, listeners, for keeping this show going and for listening. I really appreciate you doing that. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Omer Karni here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Omer Karni. Omer is an acoustic designer, consultant, studio builder, and the owner of Omer K Acoustic Design. Omer has worked with many of Israel's top producers, DJs, and artists, such as Infected Mushroom, Asaf Avidan, Avraham Tal, Johnny Goldstein, Yossi Fine, Noga Erez, and many, many more. He's also done work for various sound schools and institutions throughout Israel, such as the Rimon School of Music, and has worked with audio companies such as Waves and Sound Radix. Omer has acoustically treated 2 of my studios, so I reached out to him and wanted to know if he'd come on the show, and he's graciously agreed to do it, and I took him from his busy schedule. And so with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Omer.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You know, how did you get involved in, or I guess how did music start for you, and kind of how did that evolve into sound and acoustic treatment and all this whole world of acoustics?
Okay, cool. It's a nice story. I didn't have any musical background. Actually, a childhood friend of mine, he was always a musician his whole life from when I remember maybe 14 or 15 years old. And after I finished, school and army and my trip to India, I was always looking for something, what I wanted to do with my life. And I had no real idea. I just knew that I wanted something that's creative and also technical. And I thought about architecture and some kind of design. And I'm not very good at reading, very poor reading. So, and a friend of my brothers that studied architecture, he told me, listen, it's 5 years of you reading and doing lots of hard work. So I didn't really want it. And then this friend of mine told me, why don't you go study sound engineering? And there was this piece of land that he inherited from his grandfather, and he wanted to build his house on it, and he wanted to build a studio in the basement. It was in Echo, near Rehovot. And yeah, it sounded amazing. I'll go study sound engineering. I'll be the technician. He'll be the musician. We'll bring all the bands in Israel to record in our joint. And that's what we did. I went to study in 2004, sound engineering in Sapir, which is near the Gaza Strip. And my whole intention was to focus on mixing and room acoustics because our plan was to build it ourselves. And so I finished school. I went to work at Lior Tevet, which is a major sound engineer in Israel. And I worked with him for about a year. And then we starting construction. And I had nothing to do with construction or building or even screwing screw. And the worker there, we just told him what we wanted. And we want to build this wall with bricks and sand inside and whatever. And he said, okay, start mixing sand and concrete and start working. And I didn't really enjoy the work itself, but I saw that I'm a quick learner. Like like I said before, I can't read very well, but if I watch a video on YouTube or watch someone work, I get it really quickly, and then I want to do it myself. So we basically built.
These are the things they don't teach you at school, right?
Exactly, everything. So in all professions, not only in sound engineering. So we built for about a year. We didn't make any money. I took a loan that I never returned from this uncle of mine in the States, and and I slept at my parents' place, and we built for a year. And once the studio was ready, we started working, but it was really hard to bring bands over. We were very young, unknown, very amateur in studio work. So basically, after 2 or 3 years of working, 2 years of working in the studio, when we used to do mostly choirs and school bands and whatever, I was very bored from the recording, and my mixes, my room wasn't very flat. So, and I didn't know it at the time. I just got really frustrated that I mix and mix and mix, and it sounds awful outside, and it sounded great in the studio. So what happened? And that happens. So I was really bored and frustrated from the work, and then I just had I had an idea, like a flash, whatever, that I need to do.
A moment of inspiration.
A moment of inspiration when I said, why don't I do modular acoustics for rented apartments? That's a straight translation from Hebrew.
Wow.
Yes. So I went to a carpentry course so that they'll teach me how to make like wooden frames and stretch fabric, and I put rock wool inside. And basically I found there's an American company called Real Traps that do room acoustics. And I just watched all their videos and looked at all their products and just really straight off copied off them and tried to do exactly what they say and exactly what they do. From all the information there was online, there wasn't a lot of information online in 2008 or 9 about room acoustics. So I just flat out copied them. Yeah. And I found my first client that agreed that I'll build him a studio. And well, my initial plan was to move to Tel Aviv and build a studio in my house and bring people over. And then when I was walking around Tel Aviv selling the equipment from my old studio that I left, I met this guy and I offered him to make my first room at his place.
Like a trial acoustic room.
Yes. And that was the first studio I built for free. And then, it started from a friend of his and then another guy. And then it just progressed, the pyramid got wider and wider. So
yeah, the word of mouth spread.
Yes, exactly.
What gave you that thought to specifically make, modular acoustic rooms in rentals, like to do it in like a, not a typical built out room? What gave you that thought, that thought in your mind?
Well, in Israel, there still isn't a lot of money in the music industry, and people, bands would record in studios but home studios wasn't really a thing. It just began to be a thing. There was like a saying that you can't get a professional result in a home studio. And I just saw this opening that maybe I could do modular acoustics for musicians at home. And that was the idea.
Yeah.
And after, I think my 5th studio, my client just asked me, wait, you don't do room measurements with a microphone? I said, okay, that's interesting. So I went and bought this RME sound card and the microphone. And then I went back to all my 5 rooms that I built and started measuring them. And then I saw, whoa, I move the speakers, it changes the frequency response. I move the bass trap, it changes stuff, So I started learning and fixing the rooms that I've already built and trying to understand what I'm doing throughout the whole process. And, taking notes.
Yeah. Was there a moment when you kind of realized this is working out for you? You're onto something? Because you told me, like, I think I've done more like rooms that weren't meant to be studios, but have turned into studios than like probably anybody else. I remember you telling me that. And I was like, wow, that's really wild. Like, when did you realize this is working?
Well, when you build a room from scratch, you can plan it from, the angles in the walls and the materials and whatever. And home studios, it's like, this is the room, deal with it. So I
Yeah.
had no choice. I had to deal with it. So I started fighting sound waves, until I got it. I was really into fixing the problem. I had a cancellation in 80 hertz, and where is that coming from? And I would walk around the room and listen and look for it and whatever, put like signal generators and finding it and understanding like what makes it tick. It took a while. It took a long while. At the beginning, I had some, like, my first room was good, actually. There were some cancellations in the bass, but none of us could hear it. So, because we didn't have any experience in that, and we didn't do measurements. So it was like, wow, this is really clear. You can hear the details. You can hear the stereo imaging. And, that was a success for me because I had nothing to compare to, and I didn't do any measurements, and it sounded great. So
You just used your like intuition, like, okay,
yeah,
like,
I used my intuition, and I didn't have enough experience with my ear to know if the room is good or not. I could just hear the separation and all the instruments, and it sounded amazing. And I think in about 1 or 2 months of building studios, I was much more professional. My ear trained really fast.
yeah,
Because this is what you do. You listen to rooms, you listen to speakers, you compare the same music in different rooms with different speakers, and you hear different results.
right, yeah.
Once you have like this reference music that you already heard in many rooms, then it's easier to tell what's wrong with the room. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Totally.
yeah. So
Yeah, I remember you even the first room that you built for me, you had a playlist of songs. You're like, I know these songs, like let's listen to them and let's see if it's working in this room or not. And like you even like we tried building in one bedroom and it didn't work because there was something terrible in the bass. And then we built it in the other room, and you're like, I have a good feeling about this. And you put on like music, and you're like, oh, this is working. Like I can hear that this mix is going to translate.
Yes, I even tell your story to people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because first of all, you don't have the luxury of changing rooms in switching rooms usually, and
yeah.
In your case, I remember that it was something that I just couldn't understand why there was this cancellation. I don't know, maybe 70 hertz.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, and everything we did didn't help it. And then, there's a question that someone asked me, have I ever given up on a room? So that's that's one of the stories.
That's the room that was given up on.
Yes, we gave up on that room and we found a new room, and it was great. Yeah.
Totally. Well, I know that your approach to acoustics has evolved and changed. And just from my experience, having done 2 of my rooms, right? So the first room, you were kind of putting up these panels, you were screwing these like panels into the wall, and you put bass traps in the corners. And I remember you were like measuring the corners to find where those like bass frequencies were really nasty, and then like placing a bass trap there. Whereas when you came to this room that I'm in now, you said, okay, and you basically just put the bass traps where you thought they had to go. And that was like pretty much it. It was a completely different system. It was a different kind of foam and fabric. What changed over that time period of like, I guess it was like 6 years?
I think maybe 4 years ago. Well, it's a long story, the way my understanding of sound waves evolved. But to make it short, one of my employees told me, listen, let's find a different material than rock wool, mineral wool, because it itches and it's not healthy. And I just tried out. I just called like this foam company, and I told them, give me like big chunks of whatever densities you have. And I started trying them out, and I found stuff that worked amazing. And I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when I started using a few densities of foam, after I'm a trial and error guy. So I would try all these different densities in different places and understand how the sound reacts to those bass traps. Because bass